Okay, awesome. So today's meeting is going to be discussing the cinematic universes of Marvel and DC, and obviously trying to find out which one is better because there was very passionate discussion on the group about which one is better. And yeah, so let's translate that into an excellent session today. Hope it goes very well. Okay, so opening notes on the meeting. So Marvel and DC movies have been on for a really long time because it starts with all the TV shows. Remember, like the legendary Batman TV shows, whatever. But yeah, and we've had superheroes linked with film and cinema for a very long time. And we've had excellent movies like the Dark Knight series, which was phenomenal, and even the Watchmen movies and V for Vendetta, all born out of DC Comics. I am already sound like a DC fanboy, which I am. Um, but um, but yeah, so we're here to discuss what happened next because once the MCU kicked off, it just started like one thing rolled into the other and became this huge multi-billion-dollar industry almost. So superhero film. So yeah, let's just dive into the discussion. So who would like to start us off first? Do we want to name ourselves Marvel and DC and start arguing, or do we just like go for it and talk on both sides or whatever? I don't know. Up to you guys. Yeah, so let Miss Avantika start because she was the one who initiated all this nonsense. But so go ahead, Avantika, make your starting arguments.
Okay. Um, Marvel versus DC. I prefer, if we talk comics wise, they both had legendary comic writers. Stan Lee, of course, started with by writing DC comics. Then he moved on to he changed his superheroes and he joined Marvel. And DC Comics had amazing comic writers. There was Jerry Siegel and Bill Finger and whoever. And I think comic wise, DC was quite superior to Marvel in character storylines. But when we talk about movies, there is no question. Marvel makes better movies. They have better character arcs. They have better storylines. DC just massacred their whole. Their origin stories were just. It didn't play out so well on screen. Um, Their saving face is the Dark Knight trilogy, which was made by Christopher Nolan, which is one of my favorite movies. But even Batman Begins, the ones in the 1980s, was also pretty good. But except for the Batman series, all the other movies, they are quite substandard. Uh, there's no logic. Their villains are just sad. Um, on the other hand, Marvel, they have this whole elaborate plan. They have like 12, 15 movies, one after the other, Easter eggs. They keep their viewers engaged. And just generally, the characters. The DC has these characters who were gifted and burdened, I would say, to bear the weight of the world and just take care of everything. And Marvel has these heroes who just they want to do it. They were not born to do it. They don't have any special powers except Thor, who is a god, and he too was a human for a while. They want to save the world. They have those qualities, and that's why they classify as heroes. If you can be a hero. But DC, on the other hand, they have these gods and who are immortal and cannot be defeated fighting the whole world. Not relatable. That is my opening.
Yeah, so a few things that a few points she made here were that, yeah, but Pele, all the Dark Knight trilogy and everything that came before that isn't, they are DC movies, but they're not like part of the DC cinematic universe, if you know what I mean, like how we have the MCU. So yeah, those are pretty much standalone. Great films, undeniably, but those are pretty much standalone. And yeah, she made great points about DC characters never feeling relatable, and I get that. So something that made Marvel so nice was that they used the whole comedic element to their films, which I really loved, which made them so relatable. Like those movies that can make you sit in a theater and cheer along with them and yell at the screen and just have fun with your characters, which DC really lacked, in my opinion. Even though the Dark Knight trilogy made you feel so much, but it really lacked that ability to garner a fan following like the Marvel movies did. So yeah, and even Batman, even though Batman is their probably one and Superman, but the two of them being their only box office sellout films, it took a lot of trying. I mean, the Batman they got it wrong so many times before actually getting it right. It was that one Batsuit. I think Batman Forever we had nipples on. That was just
Yeah. I think it
another
was
level.
Keaton, right?
I think that was Keaton, right? And then we had
No,
Clooney in the
Oh
Batsuit.
my
not
god.
If you can screw up a movie with George Clooney as
Nope.
your main
Who was
character,
it?
yeah,
I think it was Clooney. Clooney.
George
it
Clooney.
was Clooney. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I mean, it took them so many attempts to make something great, but I think a lot of that was like Avantika said, their failure to relate to their characters. So their origin stories were so supernatural, it was not relatable. Um, they always insisted on. I can see where they're coming from, but they insist on having that very dark color palette and everything. Um,
Hmm.
and again, I know what you're going for, but it just didn't really click with people because the Marvel movies are now something you can take your little kid to watch. And when you were in high school and college, you started watching the first Iron Man movie when it came out, and then you take your kid to watch it now because the latest Ant Man movie, and you can both love it at the same time, which you can't really do with DC. So I think that's one thing that they failed. Who wants to go next? Ram or Emma, maybe. Go ahead.
Manuel, you go.
Yeah, go ahead, Emmanuel.
Well, to be true, I wouldn't call myself like a Marvel or DC fan because there are elements of both the universes which kind of appeal to me. Like as Avantika said, in Marvel you can relate to the characters, like Captain America. He was nothing like to begin with. He had this really simple beginnings, this humble beginnings, and that's what defined him as a hero. As his story progressed throughout the cinematic universe, and so that is what appeals to me as a fan in either DC or Marvel movies. How grounded the characters are. Like I wouldn't relate much to Thor or these extraterrestrial superheroes or anything, but characters like Captain America, then Batman, uh, the Black Widow, Iron Man. These are kind of rooted characters. Like they have this logic. This story is somewhat is kind of logical. Yes, so this can like actually take place. This can actually happen. But Thor, like a god, like a Norse god, a fictional Norse god, and then who else can I say? Martian Manhunter from DC Universe, Superman. I can't really relate to this because these are gods. So I like the groundedness of characters, which I can relate to, and that's what appeals to me in both the universe. But if I were to turn off my brain and think about it, then uh, characters like Flash, Spider-Man, they would like really appeal to me. So that's my view.
Okay, so hi Laksh, welcome to the chat. And yeah, Emmanuel, you made great
Yeah,
points
sure.
that you made great points about relatability of characters. And for you, it wasn't really a Marvel versus DC thing, but it was more something. As soon as you related to the character, that made the movie for you, and I completely get that. So yeah, who wants to go next? Maybe Aditya. You can go
Okay.
ahead.
My take on it is not on particular side, because ultimately for me it was enjoyable, and frankly I enjoy both. Despite this being there, I have much from both sides, so that's not the thing. I enjoy both. The comics of both are quite good. I feel DC's comics are a bit better. I'd say Marvel does the movies brilliantly, and they have the transition from the page to the screen is done beautifully. Whereas DC, they've watched everything that they have, except I would say their animated universe. The DC AU is brilliant. Like Flashpoint Paradox is beautifully carried out, and I think they had a lot of scope. And like certain characters, for me personally, like I enjoy the Flash quite a bit. Then from Marvel, Spider-Man. I mean, the whole thing of Spider-Man's initially, I remember reading up like history on Spider-Man and all that. And Spider-Man, I think, was one of at the time it came out, he was one of the few characters, I think probably the first character to have an entire mask. Like up till that point, you had Superman, who you knew was a white male or something like that. Whereas the appeal for a lot of people with Spider-Man was that it could be anybody under the mask. And I think the most beautiful story which illustrates that is Miles Morales' story. And recently, I've been like on a binge watch of Into the Spider-Verse. I think I've watched it like 4 times already. It's a beautiful movie. The animation is top notch. I mean, I think they even won the Oscar for that. The soundtrack in the movie is phenomenal, and I think it has one of the best rise of the hero moments in a movie, where he jumps off the building and what follows. So yeah, I'd say I've fallen both sides of this. Like recently, DC's movies like Shazam, I really enjoyed. Aquaman was okay. There's a new one also coming, The Lost Kingdom. And yeah, I'm honestly waiting for the Flash movie. It's been in limbo for God knows how long. I think the one thing I really enjoyed in the Snyder Cut was the scene where Flash's power was very accurately portrayed. I mean, this is the best. Otherwise, the previous one was pretty shitty. But yeah, that's my rant. I think Shreesh, you could go next.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, despite this background, like yeah, I'm a huge fan of Marvel also. I've probably watched more Marvel films than DC films, right? Because obviously there are more Marvel films. And yeah, I respect the Marvel films, and actually I enjoyed very much. But the more to pick with Marvel is they are pretty repetitive in the sense the themes are the same. Like they don't experiment much, and there's not. I don't have anything against them as such. Like it's okay. You found a winning formula with Iron Man and that trilogy, and then you said, okay, let me continue with that. You're making lots of money with it. I have no problem with that. You go on with it. You're making money. Be happy with it. I have no problem with that. But see, DC has a different approach, right? DC Universe has taken like they are calling in new directors, like having their own thematic and cinematic sensibilities. Like Snyder has his own like that slow-mo and bronzy colored palette. That is his sensibility. And then obviously Christopher Nolan brought his own sensibilities into the thing. And the thing is, except Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok, I don't think they called in anybody else like who has his own different take on the cinematic universe of that particular franchise. I think Taika Waititi did a pretty good job with Ragnarok. He brought his own sensibilities into it, and like I said, like when Zack Snyder directed Watchmen, that's the time when he came into the mainstream after that, right? Then he made all that. So it's like DC has been like a launching board for many of the directors that we have right now. Like be it Christopher Nolan, after Batman Begins, he started off with his blockbuster films and many more like that. And I guess Waititi is the only guy from the Marvel director universe who you like after Ragnarok he made Jojo Rabbit and whatnot. So the thing I like about DC is they are ready to experiment. They are ready to go dark. They are ready to go funny with Shazam. They are ready to go super dark with Batman v Superman. Though it's a pretty bad movie, still they tried something, right? Like a dark tone and stuff like that. So I think you have to give credits to DC for that, and the only reason I might, go for a DC film rather than a Marvel film. Plus, one more thing is the DC films have a more theatrical thing about it, in the sense you can watch a Marvel film at home and get the same thing, except for Endgame. I have a regret that I didn't watch Endgame in the theaters. But yeah, any other film, if you watch it at home or you watch it in the theaters, it's the same feel. But I think with DC, you have, like, when you watch it in theaters with the surround sound, with the big screen, it gives a different feel. So maybe that's the only reason I would go for a DC film in the theaters rather than at home. That's my take at it. Anybody else wants to say anything? Free to. It's open for.
Yeah. So I just add a few points before I'll just wrap up what you guys said before I move to the big guns. I think Keegan's really rearing up to go. But yeah, exactly like she said. Yeah. So DC has much more to play with, in my opinion. You can see movies like The Joker, phenomenal movie. I mean, the characters have so much depth in each one of them, which I find lacks in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, exactly what you said. It's basically Disney-fied. They found a winning formula, copy paste everywhere, feel good, enough humor, enough action sequences, make everybody shout and cheer in the theater. You've won the game. Thor Ragnarok is probably the best MCU film to come out, and I think I would say the whole Guardians of the Galaxy series was phenomenal. Just the way they put it forward, I just, maybe because it's very retro and I love that, but it is something I really like. And Thor Ragnarok, Taika's character himself, I really loved him. He just added that extra punch to the whole movie, which like blew it out of the park for me. So yeah, so currently what we're talking about is DC has the better content, but Marvel has executed it and found the winning formula, and that's why they are skyrocketing right now, while DC is still picking up their pieces. So yes, Keegan, you go ahead and take the mic.
Actually, I feel somebody with Marvel more Marvel oriented should go before me, because then we have this alternate, Marvel DC thing going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because it
okay.
shouldn't be like DC, Marvel, that.
Okay, sure. So does anybody else want to go and speak for Marvel before this? Laksh, maybe? You want to say something, Laksh?
Yeah, thank you, Ashwin. For me, I'm a Marvel fan. For me, when I started watching MCU, it was after the first year MBBS when the vacations had come. So I am a writer, so I don't know about this film and intricacies of direction and other stuff. So for me, story is more important and the message which is there within it. So because I was totally into Marvel Universe, so I was in the aura of that. So basically, their entire cinematic universe, the storyline which they had created. The only difference that we can make out between Marvel and DC is that Marvel took 18 movies to make something, mind-boggling like Endgame. But that same thing was done only 3 movies by Christopher Nolan. Because when I watched the Batman series, I can say that that part of my brain which was totally into Marvel got a great competition. So in that sense, really DC has very good storyline, both in movies and comics perhaps. But Marvel really the execution is most perfect. Because now we don't have any reputation like Batman again in DC, except the Joker movie which came. Um, Other than that, the message that we get, the relation, the way we can relate to the characters, there will be one particular character in Marvel with which we can totally relate to. However, the characters of DC, they are quite high in their personality, difficult to relate with. Maybe we are not, everyone is not too dark or too in depression like maybe Joker or too much smart like Batman or too much having superpowers like Superman. But somewhere in Marvel, somewhere kind of struggle or kind of you know desire to do something that we can relate like real life, as close to real life as possible. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, perfect. So Laksh is also back in the point that even though DC has the better stories, and with a good director, you can do great things with a story like DC's. But ultimately, Marvel wins it out just because of pure relatability and like pure like storytelling. Marvel is way better. So yeah, Keegan, go ahead.
Okay, I will start my rant now. So when it comes to Marvel versus DC, I feel the problem is awareness. Now, okay, you might have more Marvel films, you have more Marvel fans. That's because when people think of DC, they don't know the real DC. When you've got Arrowverse, Supergirl, you've got Smallville, then in you've got various cartoons, you've got various comics, you've got video games, and not to mention that when you go to Marvel, you think of a movie, you have to think about it as a culmination of other movies. But as a stand-alone movie, I feel that DC did it better than anything else. Suppose take Suicide Squad, right? Suicide Squad, and especially uh, Suicide Squad, the new one coming up. And whenever you all watch Flash, I don't know how many people have watched Flash over here. If you all have been a fanboy like me and seen Flash from the very beginning, the way it has evolved, it has been such a crazy ride. If you watch Legends of Tomorrow, if you watch Arrowverse, if you watch Supergirl, especially the new seasons, the way that DC has evolved, and whenever it comes to animations or episodes, I feel that DC really mauls Marvel, and Marvel in their movies, they really bank on their fan base. Problem is, they don't listen. DC, in comparison to Marvel, really listens their fans. They give them what they want. They give them what they want, I mean. So in culmination, I feel that when it comes to Marvel, you can brag about MCU, you can brag about Iron Man being richer than Batman, or like Captain America just led to the formation of Commander Steel and Aquaman. But honestly, that's it. When it comes to the standalone movies, comics, animation, video games, DC really takes the cake. So yeah, that's my rant.
Okay, so before we cycle back and open it up to whoever wants to talk, I will not tell anybody to talk after this. So Keegan makes a point that yeah, the DC has the better expanded universe, and Marvel doesn't. And Marvel's is more about like I'll do whatever I want, and let my actual hardcore fans do whatever they. But I think I would disagree with Keegan here, because I think Marvel is more about fan service. I think because you're a very hardcore fan and because you're very interested in the expanded universe and you bothered to delve into all of it, you think DC is a bit better because they cater to the more hardcore fans. I think Marvel caters to the everyday person, and like I mentioned earlier, Marvel, you can go for a Marvel film taking your parents and your child to the movie and everybody's going to have a good time. So that way, as for fan service, they won't cater to to a hardcore fan who's been watching the movies since they were kids. But I think they'd do a good job. Yeah, they do a good job with catering to the people. Basically, they're making a Disney movie, and Disney has the formula straight. They know how to get their audience, right? But DC doesn't. And I'd also like to counter your point about the DC expanded universe to Flash. I felt, see, Flash got a bit out there by the third season. I would admit I've not watched all of it, but by the third season, Flash lost me. I mean, I felt it didn't have any direction anymore and was just getting too convoluted. But the Marvel expanded universe isn't much to complain. I don't have much to complain about because I really enjoyed it. So I've been watching Agents of Shield since day one, since the first episode came out. I really love the series, and it delves into all the parts which you don't see in the movies. So whatever, like, I don't remember most of the stuff right now, but what species is Groot? So Groot ka species has had a war with the blue guys. I'm sorry, I'm not too familiar with the terms, but yeah, I felt as far as lore goes for hardcore fans, if you just expand yourself into the Marvel expanded universe and watch their movies, and like even the Daredevil series is phenomenal, and the Agent Carter I loved. So yeah, that. So I think it's pretty comparable, but I think Marvel has found that fan service formula much more than anyone else. So yeah, anybody go next. Go ahead, it's open for. Just unmute and start talking. Ram, Shrish, maybe somebody. Just get the ball going.
Okay, so since nobody else is talking, so I'll just like so yeah, the thing about the same formula, right? So I'll just try to elaborate it with an example. So let's take the Iron Man trilogy, right? So we have the first movie, which is about how Tony Stark ends up in a cave, has nothing, not many resources, and he finds a way and comes out of it. And then his own trusted fellow, destroys him, meaning whatever. So then he has to fight him, and then he wins in the end. So what happened in Iron Man 2? Again, so he's about to die because of some poisoning. So again, then he's kind of quarantined in his own house, and then he finds out a way to use the minute amount of resources he has, and then he comes out of it, and then he the war machine comes after him, and then he again saves the day. And then what happens in Iron Man 3? The same thing, like he gets lost somewhere in the middle of nowhere, then he uses the limited amount of resources he has, then he comes out of it, then he fights a guy he knew, like Killian, and then he saves the day. So you see like how this is going, right? It's the same formula. Okay, obviously in Iron Man 1 it is about how a billionaire sees how his weapons is being misused, and in 2 he finds out that how death changes a person, and in Iron Man 3 it is about post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff like that. Yeah, it's good, but the basic the structure of the movie is the same, right? Because the character is like his main superpower is coming out of tricky situations using his brain. So the story structure has to be in that way, right? So they're quite limited to the structure of their standalone movies because of the characters. When it comes to DC characters, you can you can expand on it more because there is more depth because of the way it is written in the comics. The characters are written well, so it is we are ready to see them in any light. So we can see Batman as a very fun-loving, Batman and Robin kind of guy, sarcasm and stuff like that. And then we can see Batman going through a lot of stress and coming out as like in the Batman trilogy, or maybe a guy, a frustrated citizen in Batman v Superman, or a guy who thinks that he has made a mistake and is stressed out about doing the mistake in Snyder Cut. Like I killed Superman, now I have to bring him back. So that kind of thing. A man in whom the hope is restored through Superman. So have such depth in the character, and I think DC has made a mistake that it hasn't explored it as much and put it on the screen as much as possible. But in the future, in the long run, I think DC would come out a little bit ahead than Marvel.
Yeah, just unmute yourself.
Again, this is just my opinion. Yeah, this is just my opinion. I may be wrong, so
yeah, no pressure. Just unmute and
I'd agree with Shrish on that point. Like, just that Marvel characters are a bit one note, whereas DC characters have a bit more morally gray decisions to make, and there's a lot of the morality that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, whether to kill or not to kill. Although it's a bit of a joke also that Batman just leaves the Joker running around. I mean, he could kill the entire city. He'll still be like, no, I can't kill him. But yeah, whereas on the contrast, you'd see Marvel characters although not particularly plagued by it, but still to a certain extent. So I was just agreeing with what she said. Yeah.
Okay, so if I had to make an argument for Marvel at this point, I would like to point out the X-Men because nobody's talked about the X-Men. I think whatever big dose of morality you want in your movies, I want to take X-Men and throw it on your face because
I still
X-Men
don't
encapsulates
find that much of the thing with the X-Men.
X-Men encapsulates humanity very well. The whole
That is there, but then I would say more it's better portrayed in the comics or the
No, it is.
animated universe. In the
It is.
movies, it's kind of.
No, so if you look at the X-Men, which was the Origins movie when they're younger, I've forgotten that. First
First
generation,
Class.
First Class.
First Class.
So if you look at First Class in the
Yeah.
origin story, you can properly see what they were going for. It's like how
Yeah,
the division between Professor X and Magneto is proper left-wing, right-wing ideology in
Yeah.
politics and life, and just how each person approaches the situation, and how the characters grow. And even if you look at the Wolverine as a standalone character, I couldn't ask for much more. Even Logan was such a phenomenal movie, and
Logan was a beautiful movie. I have to.
It was mind blowing. It gave you so much to think about, and so I think if you want your morality and your cool cinematography, and if you want your whole like the slightly darker take on everything, I would say go and watch the X-Men movies because Marvel has that too. Marvel can do all the stuff you liked about DC, but you have to just pick your movie right. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I love the X-Men movies, but I think they left a lot of loose ends somewhere with Days of Future Past. Their films don't. They really there's a lot of confusion with that. But I love Wolverine. The character Logan was amazing. So I love the X-Men movies, the characters, but I think they have a little problem with what comes first and what comes later.
Yeah.
So the thing becomes like, should movies be like, chained up, like not chained up in the sense, should movies be linked? Is it necessary for them to be linked? Like Days of the Future Past, if you take it just as a standalone film, if you forget about all the other films and if you just see it like that, it was pretty good, right? It wasn't that bad. But since we expect it to, again, like because of the Marvel phenomenon, MCU phenomenon, we expect that, okay, this plot point will be expanded in some other movie. Since we are not getting that, we again for okay, it's not a good movie. So is it necessary for it to be a link? That's the question right now. I don't think so. I feel that it should not be a necessity. If it is there, good enough, but then it's not a necessity.
Yeah. I think ultimately it comes down to target audience only in the end. No? So for all the people who just want a happy film with all ends tied and nicely knotted up in a bow, you'd watch your Marvel film. But if you want something a bit more, you maybe move to the the fringes of the Marvel universe and the DC universe. If you really want that cinematography and you enjoy the film for film, not film for story. Yeah.
What about Marvel? The how they can explore more. I think it's harder to determine the fate of the Marvel characters. DC practically has gods who are immortal, and even if they die, they get them back somehow because they don't have more. Like they can't they haven't expanded yet. I hope they do in the future. But like Superman, he's indestructible. You can throw anything at him and it's the same thing. So there's no real fear. But if you take Marvel, there are characters dying. Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, they really killed off like half of their main characters who you wouldn't expect, who were like the star of the whole like the Marvel universe. So it's you don't know. It's not predictable. That is what I'm saying.
Okay, this meeting is ending. I will send the last link and we'll do another last session before we wind up. So yeah, thanks everyone. Just give me a few minutes.